Ed joined Toastmasters in February 1972 in Charleston, South Carolina, Club 2018, Transit Toastmasters. It was an Air Force-based club and took its name from the fact the base was a jumping off point for many transatlantic flights. Since that time, he and his wife Jennifer have been members of clubs in regions 8, 4, 6, 4, 3, and 5 in that order, and as many districts. The interesting thing is that each region is like its members' districts and their member clubs have their own personality. Ed served as international director from 1981 to 1983 and international president from 1990 to 91. Ed says each step of the way was a new educational experience for him that helped him immensely, professionally and personally. On this diamond anniversary of Pioneer, Ed will share some observations and insights on parallels between diamonds, the club, and the member. Please welcome Ed Bick, Diamond in the Rough, Ed Bick.
Well, thank you very much. And some of what I'm going to share with you tonight, you've already heard, but I think it's important that we hear it again. Congratulations, Pioneer. 75 years. Wow. There are not too many clubs that can say that. As a matter of fact, out of the roughly 470 clubs that have been formed prior to Pioneer's forming, only 122 remain. Now, before you start asking your questions about Iowa math, and I know Jim's already thinking this. Let's see, we're club number 453. He said 470 clubs formed before us. Doesn't compute. Well, in fact, it does, because there were some clubs that were formed early on that closed, and those numbers were reused. Hence, 470 clubs were formed before Pioneer, but only 122 remain. Certainly a diamond record, and I congratulate you all for that. Tonight, I'd like to draw some comparisons. We're talking about our diamond anniversary. I'd like to draw some comparisons between Diamonds in the Rough, Diamonds, a club, and you. In 1947, there were some significant events. We've heard about some of them already. Jim reminded me of this several days ago when we were talking, and we heard it again tonight. But in April 1st of 1947, Jackie Robinson signed the first major league contract for a black player, breaking the color barrier, joining the Brooklyn Dodgers of the National League. A couple months later, Larry Doby signed a contract with the Cleveland Indians and broke the color barrier in the American League. Certainly, both of those young men were diamonds in the rough at the time, because they both went on to extremely proud and productive careers, landing both of them in the Hall of Fame. Certainly diamonds in their business. You heard about Chuck Yeager, who was born in, as Jim would say, West by God, Virginia, who broke the sound barrier in 1947. Certainly a diamond achievement. In September of 1947, the United States Air Force, the CIA, and the National Security Council were established. Now, everybody claims or denies, whichever way you want to look at it, that it had any relationship to do with the claim of extraterrestrials landing in Roswell 2 months prior. Draw your own conclusions. But it's certainly fitting that Steven Spielberg was born in Cincinnati just a few months prior to Pioneer being chartered. And finally, one of the most significant events worldwide was the international community recognized Israel as a sovereign state in 1947. However, March 1st belongs to the diamond that I'm looking at here, the diamond of Pioneer Toastmasters. And to fully understand what I'm trying to say here, I'd like to share with you a little bit about how a diamond is formed. Now, there's a common myth floating around that it's formed from coal. Not true. It's formed from pure carbon. Number 12 on the periodic chart for you scientists in the room, that carbon atoms are trapped beneath the Earth's surface. about 100 miles below the surface of the earth, where the temperatures exceed 2,000 degrees. The pressure there exceeds 735 pounds per square inch. Now, to put that in perspective, take an average sized person like me, well, a little bit less of me, and have me stand on the head of a pin. And that's how much pressure there is at that level in the Earth's surface. Over millions of years, the carbon atoms are squeezed and heated and forced together until they fuse into a stone, a gem we call a diamond. But they're 100 miles down. The next step over eons of time is to push those stones to the surface of the earth. And eventually they are found in mines. Now, the casual observer who walks through an area where there are diamonds probably would see something on this order. Pretty nondescript. It's just a plain old stone. But to a diamond cutter who knows what it is, and a gemologist, they will take that stone and they will study it. And they will look at it, and then they will start cutting it and shaping it and breaking it until they've got it to the point where they can polish the surfaces and it becomes the brilliant stones that we covet the world over. So why diamonds? Well, diamonds, as I said, are coveted. They're extremely rare. They're very valuable, but they're also, as related to us as Toastmasters and to our club, they're also descriptive. How many times have you heard a sports announcer talking about a gymnast who just stuck the landing on a perfect 10 score, saying that performance was diamonds? Or perhaps to the maestro whose orchestra just performed a piece that was superb, and the comment is that performance was diamonds. Yes, diamonds are used to describe not only something of value, but something done well. And that is why I'm using the diamond to compare to the club. Let's talk about your club and when it's formed. It's formed with a group of individuals who are brought together, much like the atoms. There's a little heat. Come on, we got to get something going here. We got to get a club going here. There's a little pressure. There's a little pressure. Now, let's get this thing done. Let's get this thing chartered. Soon. So once it's put together, now what? What do we do now? We have this group, but it needs to be cultivated. It needs to be worked. It needs to be polished. And so through the Successful Club series and the Club Management Plan and the DCP and other recognition programs and club mentors and club coaches, we refine that club. We polish it. We bring in new members and add additional facets to that club to make it shine. And much like what Pioneer has done, where it has produced members who have been pillars of the community. It has produced 3 international directors. It has produced a district governor, now called a district director. These are all facets of that club, of that diamond that's been polished and shined and worked. But most diamonds don't stay the attractive gem that we all think they are, because that diamond, that surface starts to collect a little oil and a little dust, and pretty soon it gets a little cloudy, doesn't it? And it needs to be cleaned, and it needs to be polished. And so we have programs like the Moments of Truth, which allow us to go back and re-examine that stone we call the club. And what is it that needs to be done to clean it up and to polish it and to help it shine again? Do you see yourself in some of this? Do you see your own personal history in this? We too come together to a Toastmasters club, usually with a little pressure. Somebody says, you should join Toastmasters. No, you should join Toastmasters. No pressure. Yes, a little pressure. A little heat. Yeah, you get a little heat too. Eventually you join. I'm going to share my own experience with you. As was stated in the introduction, I was a young second lieutenant in the United States Air Force in 1972. Yes, I'm celebrating my 50th year of Toastmastering. And my job required briefing air crews. I was in the Air Weather Service, and as long as I was working from those charts that were on the wall and the documents that I put in front of those crew members, everything was fine. The problem is the air crews love to play the game called Stump Stormy. Weathermen were all nicknamed Stormy. And so it was Stump Stormy with table topics, and I was a failure. Impossible to respond to their questions. It was horrible. Finally, somebody in the unit said to me, Ed, I think you should join Toastmasters. It will help you. I don't think so. Yeah. Captain Tom Weimer to Second Lieutenant Ed Bick, come join my Toastmasters, come visit my Toastmasters club. Well, eventually there was enough pressure to visit the club and enough heat that I had actually joined the club. And then the day came for the icebreaker. I spent hours writing, editing, polishing, studying, memorizing. I had that icebreaker down cold, word for word, exactly what I was going to say. I walked to the lectern full of confidence, and I started into that icebreaker, and about halfway through, I froze. Nothing. I couldn't remember what I'd said. I couldn't remember what I was going to say. I'm not sure I'd even knew my own name. I mumbled something to the effect that, oh my God, this is embarrassing. And I walked back towards the door, but for some reason I sat at my seat. Then came time for the evaluation. Here comes the stonecutter, the gemologist. Paul, my evaluator, was a seasoned Toastmaster. He'd been a district governor of the district. He was an excellent speaker, and I dreaded what he was about to tell me or say. At that point, I learned something about Toastmasters that I've carried with me to this day, and I hope you carry forward to you. That's called evaluation. Paul walked over to me. He reached out. He put his hand on my shoulder. He looked at me, eyeball to eyeball, and at that point, there was no one else in the room. Just Paul and I. And he started talking. And he took Ed and he broke off a couple rough edges. And then he turned Ed around a little bit, went to the other side and polished a couple things that he thought I'd done well. And he sat down. A few weeks later, I gave that icebreaker again, sailed right through it, and never looked back. But the memory of Paul's evaluation has stuck with me for 50 years. This is the heart of Toastmasters. This is what we do. We polish the gems. We take the rough diamonds and we make them into valuable assets. And that is what I want you to take forward with you tonight. I have another example of this, and it's very important that you keep this in mind. There was another fellow in our Toastmasters club there in Charleston. His name was Bill Thalberg. He was a pilot. One day he came to the club and he said, gentlemen, I've got a 6-month temporary duty assignment in Oklahoma and I'll be back in 6 months. Well, we knew we were going to miss Bill because Bill was one of those speakers who had a golden tongue. Never an ah, never an always well organized, well delivered, perfect eye contact. The pauses were always in the right spot. The inflection was perfect every time he spoke. So we were going to miss Bill, but we knew he'd be back, so off Bill went. 6 months later, he returned and we were thrilled. We're going to hear Bill speak again. This is great. We gave him his first table topic. Who are you and what did you do with Bill? Why are you looking at the floor? Why are you stumbling? Why did you ums and ers? My God, where did all this come from? Well, very simply, he hadn't been to a Toastmasters Club meeting for 6 months. He hadn't spoken in front of a group for 6 months. Remember what I talked about when I said we get a little oil and a little dust and a little dirt on the gem? Bill had oil and dust and dirt, and he needed to be polished. It didn't take long. It didn't take long at all. A couple of good evaluations, and Bill was back to the old Bill, and we enjoyed everything that he shared with us from that point on. So keep in mind that no matter how much you have developed and how far you have gone, you must stay with it and continue to work with it. Because like the diamond and like the club and the individual, they need to remain sharp and shiny and polished. Now you're probably wondering why I had this thing around my neck. It's a string of paper clips. And there are 75 of them. Here's the first one. I don't know if you can see, but it's golden. That was the first year of Pioneer Toastmasters. And through the years, you've had some good years, and you've had some years that have been shiny years that have been a little bit slow. You can tell that through the course of the years, when someone realized we need to get out the moments of truth, we need to reevaluate. Or this could represent your own career in Toastmasters. Now, granted, you're not 75 years of Toastmasters, but nonetheless, maybe 75 months, and you can do the same thing with the 75 months. But at some point, you have to ask yourself, after this amount of time, what's in store for me down the road? Is it going to be normal? Is it going to be unique? Or will it be golden? So as you conclude your meeting today and you look forward to the next Toastmaster meeting, look beyond that. Look beyond that to the next time you gather together to celebrate a special anniversary, whether it's 80, or whether it's 100, maybe it's 100 with a double golden, or maybe it's the diamond, double diamond at 150. Obviously, not all of us will be around at that point, but certainly our memories will remain because each of us will have contributed something to the development and the continuation and the growth of this club to make it the world's most nearly perfect Toastmasters club. On to the next 75 fellow Toastmasters.